Good morning. Back in Galilee after some very blessed days in Jerusalem with some pilgrims. Here to see the golden water of the Sea of Galilee. There's an interesting spot here. I don't know what we'll pick up on the camera. It's just the light here seems to my eye bluer than it does on the screen. The center of the sky reflection and the water in the very center of the screen there. For my eye and in nature it's directly much bluer like it is above. But it doesn't show that clearly in the water in the camera on the screen. It's amazing how so much art, so much beauty is communicated regularly. Our bell is getting greener by the day. An athlete here this morning, or at least somebody doing exercise. Some guests are trickling back to stay here. There's a lot to chew on in the readings today, to taste. A word that's very close to us in our service here to pilgrims and visitors. Let brotherly love of each other continue. Do not neglect hospitality. Do not neglect hospitality. We have a saying here that hospitality is the antithesis to hostility. The words sound very alike. Hospitality is the antithesis to hostility. Hostility is the readiness to hurt the other. And hospitality is the readiness to take in the hurt person, the lonely person, the weak person, the bereaved person, the wounded person, and to bind their wounds, to tend to them, to look after them. And the wounds can also be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be moral. Man's inhumanity to men makes countless thousands mourn. And we see that also in the gospel account today of the end of John the Baptist's life. And that's caused by a grudge that's harbored. It's very dangerous to harbor a grudge, because in the moment of other kinds of weakness, it can lead us to do very great evil that we would really repent of afterwards or regret, because the grudge builds up a kind of a force of gravity to fall into something that's beneath our dignity. Harboring grudges is really, really, really treacherous for our lives, for our heart, for our mind, for our soul. I see our gardener has been downsizing this bougainvillea plant. And so it's turned into a cube. And before it was a big, wherever it wanted to grow, it grew. Now we see the aloe vera, how it has been thriving here in the shadow of the bougainvillea. The aloe vera is blessed with so many wonderful qualities for human life and health, and it has these horrible little thorns. I guess that's to protect its life from animals that might enjoy its taste or recognize its nourishment. Now there's a lot of breakage here and cuts, a lot of pruning, but that's going to grow back again so well, God willing, in no time. And there we have the sun disk. So even with just those thoughts would be a lot to dwell on, but there's so much more in the readings today. Do not neglect hospitality, for through it some have unknowingly entertained angels. We never really know the impact and consequence of any kind deed, or for that matter, any hurtful deed. We've no idea who it's going to affect. And it could affect a child later on in the telling of the story, or a grandchild. The telling of good stories is so important. And that interpretation of, or just telling the story, the letter to the Hebrews tells the story again of Abraham. And it tells us the story with a special little flavor, if you will, a special sensitivity, understanding the principle of hospitality. Do not neglect hospitality, for through it some have unknowingly entertained angels. An angel, the word technically means messenger. The word, the etymological meaning of the word, it's a messenger. So everyone who crosses our path, to whom we bestow a smile, a warm eye, a kind word, a helpful gesture, or a hand crossing a street, or pointing out a danger that there's a car coming or whatever, or there's a child around the corner, be careful how you're driving. It's amazing, hospitality, how hospitality is such a blessing. And if each human being is a blessing for another, hospitality is really the arena for that. Obviously there are other arenas as well, like prayer, because you have people that are all around the world that are praying. It's amazing. I heard an incredible little, a podcast yesterday. It's a radio show in Ireland, and I had never been aware of it. And a man was interviewed about the prayer groups they have. It's 50 years going. And just the amount of good that is doing is wonderful. And to tell the story of goodness happening, we have no idea how much that impacts humanity. Absolutely no idea. Because we've no idea who's going to be touched by that. And each one's life is shaped for eternity. And besides that, we've no idea the role people will have in life, the challenges they'll be faced with, the leadership they will be vested with, and every little bit of training in mercy, in kindness, in goodness is such a treasure for humanity in a world that, what makes the news is all the bad stuff. And we just have to tell the story again. And the author of the letter to the Hebrews, by just mentioning that line about Abraham and Sarah and their story, and from that came the birth of Isaac, even though Sarah was laughing. You know, what a different kind of context than when poor Salome went to her mother and said, "What will I ask King Herod to give me?" And because she had the grudge in her heart, she wasn't aware that she could be a blessing for Herod in his moment of debauchery, of drunkenness, of peer pressure. But her grudge impacted a decision of the king and the death of the last prophet before Jesus. It's really amazing how we're interconnected. You know, we had a great idea, one world, you know, we're all one. And in some ways that can be used in an abusive way to force people into a oneness that is not proper. It's not respectful of cultures and of identities but on the other hand, we are connected, like pulling a thread out of a certain garment and it ruins the whole garment. And it's just a little thread. It's amazing. And there was another one that I really touched my heart this morning. Be mindful of prisoners as if sharing their imprisonment. And I heard a commentary this morning from this wonderful podcast friend I have in Germany, in Frankfurt. And he was reflecting on how quickly we could go into prison ourselves. You know, there have been many countries that, let's say, have looked like they were very Christian countries, but maybe inside there was a lot of decay, and suddenly it all falls apart. Like how fast the French Revolution happened, how fast the revolution in Russia happened in 1917, how fast it turned around in Cuba and it became a persecution of the church in Nicaragua. And all of these churches had a very significant level of Christian culture and the culture of loving your neighbor and all of this, and yet it became very corrupted and suddenly people found themselves in jail. Right now, different religious orders like the Sisters of Mother Teresa, who only look after the poor of the poor, and they're expelled from Nicaragua by their dictator there. It's really amazing to see how fast, well, that's been going on for a while, so it's not that totally fast, but how fast people can be in prison. And they taught to be mindful of prisoners as if I am imprisoned with them, and that wonderful blessing of going to visit people in prison. And on the one side, there's also the physical prison. There's one actually very close to us here in Magar, 2 towns over, and you go by it every time we come here, and always thinking of the prisoners and saying a prayer for them. There's also the moral prison and the political prison and the spiritual prison people are in. And one of the big words in Jesus' ministry was liberation. Wow, the fish are jumping straight over there. I wonder if we get more. I just saw 2 jumps over there. I wonder if they'll give us another one. Just this side of the bushes in the water. I love seeing the fish jump. I used to always think it was for me until somebody told me they were grabbing flies. But still, I think it's for me. People, there's a lot more in these stories today, and I encourage you to go for it. And the beautiful prayer that's in the Psalm, "The Lord is my light and my salvation." And we see this beautiful light today. people, God bless you. See you later, alligators. What's going on here? I'm trying to turn it around and it's not going. There we go. God bless you. See you later, alligators.